Response video to a couple of response videos on the general subject of accountability and determinism. Pyro is, we've sort of reached an understanding on some of this stuff, which is really good. But he brought up the tangent point of debate and argument and some of the frustrations and obstacles to getting to understanding. And that's sort of a subject that's really been rolling through my mind the last couple of days, is method of arguing and even the futility of it, because some people are just impossible to argue with because they won't they just won't allow what argument requires, which is some capacity to try to understand what the other person is saying. And it's really got to be a mutual process. Both people have to make an effort. And in that context, I had a pretty good discussion with 8RF, and we come to some agreement on things, and then we leave some things alone. But I can't, there's still this part of his argument is that, well, people have harmless beliefs or harmless delusions. There's no point in fighting with them, and I can't really go there, just because I think there's always a danger in opening that door. I mean, once you say it's okay for there to be all this diverse perception, then you're opening the door to the religious nuts and the nonsense that gets us into so much trouble, because people are allowed to believe crazy things, and then they act on that craziness. And so it's more about, it's not about having a rule about what people can or can't believe, but I mean, there's, in a way it is about having a rule. I mean, there's certain legitimate ways of acquiring an understanding, and then there's illegitimate ways. And if you validate the illegitimate, which is, I think it or I believe it, and I have no explanation for why I believe it, well, that's not too good, because then you just gave every nutcase who has some kind of dopey belief the right to invest in that and act on that without argument. And I would say I have a right to argue with it. And sometimes it's too much trouble too to figure out which beliefs are harmless and which ones aren't, because that relates to another video by Cosmic Pilgrim, in the sense that I would say that most religion in net has been a horrible deficit to humanity. I mean, it's created the ability for people to organize, but a lot of the organization has been to create an army to go kill people, and so it's not positive organization. So anyway, I mean, really what debate is about is trying to reach an understanding, and both sides or parties in the debate really have to have a willingness to try to imagine at least what the other person is saying, or try to understand it. And arguments with like Jesus Freak will never have that quality, because his effort is only to rationalize his belief, to find excuses for everything, and so that's it. And there's no capacity to reason. But I don't think it's ever futile, because I think with every argument, you not only learn how to refine your own argument, but I think you plant seeds in the other person's mind that's going to, and they might not let go of the belief you're arguing with, but the structure of how they think might change. And so the next time they have to apply their own judgment to something, their judgment might be improved based on the argument you had with them, because their fundamental understanding is going to be better. So, I mean, I might have an argument with an anarchist, and I might not persuade him of anything, but just the mere fact that I might get him to have a glimmer of understanding of the concept of monarchy and how to prevent it and why that would be a problem, and that that's an important issue, might make them think a little further about some related subject, because the idea is in their head now that that is an important issue. So, getting to the deterministic accountability part of the argument, that's sort of where I disagree with 8RF and agree with Pyro in a lot of ways, is that there's got to be accountability. I mean, people can't just have any old dopey belief and that's okay. And I don't think, Pyro's not saying it in that sense. I'm saying that part of it. But that, what we think is something we have to take responsibility for. I mean, it might be deterministic. It might be inevitable that we're going to make some certain decisions. But from our own perspective, it never feels like it's inevitable. It's always going to... I would make the argument, Nick's argument would be, the modern mystic, that we are spectators. There's no me. There's only a spectator. Okay? We're watching the process of our brain. And I would argue that that process is a struggle, is a fight between different personalities or points of views. There's the subjective, and then there's the intellect, and there's at least these two personalities fighting with each other. And that one of them was going to win the day. One of them's going to have more influence in the final judgment that's made. The final, it might be a compromise, it might be a procrastination, there might be the result of the will might be ambiguous or indecisive, but it's still a decision. And it's not a decision we control. It's a decision that we watch happen. We watch it getting made. But that doesn't change the idea that we feel like we have control as individuals. I mean, we feel like we made the decision, and the only part of that that's accurate is that our brain made the decision. And I would disagree with Nick in the sense that Nick would say this makes people unaccountable. The fact that it is something, there is no we controlling, there's only brain, and that brain is programmed. And that even though we do reprogram ourselves constantly, if you don't have the tools, if you haven't been given the tools to make the right decision, then you're not going to make the right decision. I would argue that the tools are so readily available, that the truth is so accessible, the ethical truths, the truths you need to be a decent human being are so accessible. That knowledge is all around us. You know, you can't miss it. You can't miss the fact that other human beings feel. You can't miss the fact that they're equal to you in terms of their objective worth, you know, in a sense, and that there's no gain by stealing from somebody else. These are like obvious truths that are just right there in front of us. And or even like animals feeling or something. I mean, somebody goes out and kicks a dog, they're denying a fundamental truth, but that's just a nasty, stupid ass thing to do. And so there has to be some accountability for that. And I justify the accountability, as I made the point in the previous video, on the premise that that just indicates such a brokenness, such a logical disconnect, such retarded thinking, that, you know, that bad behavior doesn't, it's not a matter of punishing it, it's just a matter of recognizing that the individual is so broken to be able to commit that act, that gives civilization a right to act and to say, no, we're not going to let you just harm, we're not going to let you just destroy, we're going to exercise some restraint, some limitation on how much damage you can do. And that's sort of the justification for, I guess, the conflict that's innate in philosophical disagreement, is that you know, even though it might just be a perception of what is right and wrong, there's got to be some defense of the right. I mean, it's illogical to allow or defend something that doesn't make sense, or that is, in your perception, unproductive. And so in measuring philosophies, we all have to justify where we draw our own lines, and where we say it's okay for me to get more aggressive in terms of fighting something. And for me personally, yeah, I mean, the line is based on this simple premise first. You know, it's that, you know, the common knowledge that you have to respect your equals, that's a given. And then the fact that there has to be respect for the negative reality of suffering or pain that you can cause, you know, imposes an obligation not to willfully exploit or willfully hurt things. And any philosophy that can't accept that premise is broken, in my opinion. And then when it goes to the extent of the religious fanatic who finds all manner of justification because it's God's ethics, not common sense ethics, that are the rule, you know, where, you know, good behavior isn't defined based on what you do in the world, it's defined on whether you knelt properly and bowed your head properly and put your hands together properly and properly kissed the feet of some deity. I mean, that has nothing to do with any common sense notion of doing good. I mean, it's stupid. So anyway, I guess that would be the key point, would just be that we're reprogramming ourselves, but we're not actively, the brain is doing that. The knowledge base we have is doing that. Our experience is doing that. We aren't doing it. We are just a spectator. Consciousness is just spectating the process of the brain's function. And it's an illusion that we have control, but it's a powerful illusion. So I mean, yeah, we might as well live in it. There's no reason to obsess about the fact that it's predestined just because as it's happening it is so kinetic. It's right here in front of us. I mean, all of this seems very spontaneous, and there's no reason to find that in conflict with the fact that it's predestined. Doesn't change the fact that we are living in the moment, and so there's no reason not to go with what we think and how we think. And even understanding the predestined part gives us, I think, a little bit more power to say, yeah, I really have to think this through, because it really is based on what I've been exposed to, and so I have to, you know, the more thinking I do, the more likely it is I'm going to come up with a more refined and a better answer. a better solution, a better decision.